Well, the FM24 winter transfer update is just around the corner, but as part of that, as well as getting excited about all the transfer changes and the other database changes that come, we want to talk about people who are likely to get a bit of a boost when it comes to their attributes after the update. So today we're going to look through 10 Premier League players that I think are going to get the biggest upgrades after this winter update. A few of them probably fairly obvious, hopefully a lot of them are right, and you can let me know as we go along whether you agree or disagree with my predictions. A quick shout out and thank you to our sponsor HelloFresh UK. You can find a link to that in the description for 60% off your first box plus free delivery. But let's crack straight on in no particular order with 10 players that I feel are going to get a big upgrade in the winter update. Well, first up, I've gone for, I think, the most obvious one, and of the 10 players I've selected, the one who's currently rated the weakest, because Jackhinwood is an under-21 player at Brighton in the original database for FM24, and at 18 years of age, he is pretty mediocre and not that versatile when it comes to his positioning. Now, at Brighton, he's been playing several games in midfield, at right back, he's played occasionally on the left as well, and he's been a bit of a superstar. He's featured in over half of their Premier League fixtures. He's popped up with a couple of goals too. And he's shown the potential of a good Premier League player. Something that in FM24, as well as having a slightly weaker current ability, he really doesn't have a high ceiling. That's something that will definitely change when the winter update comes around. Next, we move on to another teenager who's in a slightly different predicament when it comes to his FM24 attributes. In the original database, Kobby Mayu had massive potential, and the researchers clearly saw the talent that this guy has gone on to show already. One of the things he doesn't have, though, is a current ability that allows him to compete at Premier League level. He's also in their 21 squad at the start of the game, whereas now he's pretty much a permanent fixture in their first 11, even with returning players. He's dropped out the likes of Scott McTominay and Christian Eriksen to play this guy regularly. And although he's got the ceiling in FM at the minute, he doesn't have the current ability. So when it comes to the January update, I'm expecting a few technical improvements in the game. I'm also expecting a little bit more mentally in certain areas too. Positioning and off the ball movement, both definitely shown to be good so far. But technically, Kobby Mayu, I feel, will be getting some big improvements. Next up, we move on to a more established name already in Cole Palmer, who obviously went to Chelsea from Manchester City for fairly big money in the summer. Now again, didn't have the best current ability or potential ability in FM in the original update. Quite often, if you float around 5 to 10 years in the future in your saves, you'll see him around the lower end of the Premier League or even the top end of the Championship. But in a poor season for Chelsea, Cole Palmer has become a star, with significant contributions in terms of goals and assists, and to overall gameplay as well. His attributes are sure to be upgraded in the winter update to reflect the fact that he is now one of the most important players at Chelsea, and that he is statistically a very good player at Premier League level. I would expect him to see one of the biggest improvements of any Premier League player, possibly 2 attribute points pretty much across the board. Cole Palmer is going to be one to watch in the winter update, because this kid is going to get a big upgrade. My next one is someone who's probably not going to get quite as much of an upgrade up front, but someone who perhaps deserves one more than most, because Dominic Solanki is right up there when it comes to the most non-penalty goals in the Premier League. He scored 14 with just 1 from the spot, and he's also popped up with 3 assists as well. Dom Solanki has had a real breakthrough year after seasons of showing promise, and he's starting to look like a real handful as a Premier League striker. I can see him getting slight upgrades on the technical side, potentially on the mental side as well, because he has shown that strength of character this year. But I actually think his biggest upgrade might be physically, because one of the things we've seen from him at 6'2", as a strong lad in addition to all of his ability, is that he's not always been able to show that on a Premier League pitch. But the way Iraola's playing with Bournemouth and the way he's given freedom to be that focal point of the team, his agility, his balance, his pace even, I feel they will all get a slight upgrade. So maybe more of a 1 attribute point than a 2 attribute point upgrade as we saw with Palmer. But I can see Dom Solanki being a lot better after the update than he is at the moment. And he's already pretty good, to be fair. Yes, I'm sorry as we reach the midway point, but I have had to throw a Luton Town player in here, and I think with good reason on this occasion. Ted Mengi was signed for Luton from Manchester United for a few £100,000 as a development signing at the end of the August window. But since then, he has arguably become one of the most important defenders in the Luton Town team, now attracting interest, reportedly, for 20 to 30 million from several Premier League clubs. Teden Mengi has become a regular at Premier League level, with statistics that show up well against pretty much any defender in the league, as well as being physically imposing, which is already reflected in FM. Mengi has become a very good out-and-out defender. Maybe not the best on the ball just yet, but in the tackle, in the air, and certainly in terms of composure and bravery under pressure, Teden Mengi has proved to be every bit a Premier League defender. And here, as you can see, his attributes, and if you put him on the loan list at the start of the game, you'll often find it ended up in League One. Teden Mengi is going to get a massive upgrade in this window. Certainly a couple of attribute points across most of the technical and mental attributes. And I know because Miles is a Watford fan, Luton do get underrated a bit in FM in my opinion. But Teden Mengi, I think you might see his technical and mental stats start to match up with his physical ones from the original database. That's my prediction for the update. Teden Mengi due a big upgrade. Next is another young player who has become a bit of a superstar this season in the Premier League. Again, mainly broke into the team due to injuries, but has stayed there due to quality and experience. Miley is someone who has shone at Newcastle in what has been a pretty difficult season at times for them, particularly with a long injury list in that midfield area, and of course the suspension to Tonali. But Miley, while he's got a big potential ability in FM, his current ability and his mentality means that he doesn't always reach it. He's actually a player I've got in my current head coach series, but he is a player who has become an average Premier League midfielder rather than anything more. Now, we know at this young age that some players come in and have a burst and never reach their potential, but for Miley, he's shown that at current ability, he can compete at Premier League level, while maybe not being an absolute superstar just yet. He certainly deserves an upgrade on what, again, are pretty much League One level attributes at the moment. So much like Teden Mengi a moment ago, I see Miley getting a big upgrade, and again, possibly a couple of attribute points in most areas across the game. Next, we move over to Tottenham, and this is a bit of a weird one because again, it is someone who is a wonder kid who's described as being a potential superstar in FM, but quite often, Pape Sarr does not meet that when it comes to Football Manager 2024. Part of the reason is mentality. He has fairly low determination, and some of his background hidden attributes don't allow him to shine until you've worked with him in a mentoring group. He also has fairly limited attributes technically, something that he's shown he can be dependable with in the Premier League this year. Now, I don't blame the researchers for having him at a lower current ability, but under Ange Postecoglou, Sarr has become a key component of a well-performing Tottenham side. His physical attributes perhaps already outlined in FM24, but his mental ones and particularly some of his technical ones when it comes to his defensive play, his marking, certainly his concentration off the ball as well. Things that he's shown he can be incredibly dependable with this season, and I think will be reflected in the winter update. Perhaps again not one of those that's going to get the most striking upgrade because of some of the others we've seen already, but definitely Pape Sarr is going to be a better player when it comes to Tottenham's first team after the winter update, and certainly should be competitive with his other centre midfield counterparts. Whereas at the moment, if you go to the Tottenham pecking order in FM24, he's probably behind Oliver Skipp, which of course isn't the case in real life. On the flip side to the man we've just talked about, K Quanza is someone who needs a big potential ability upgrade, because those of you that have been following my Southend save this year will know that K Quanza is a very solid centre-half. You can see already here, not bad attributes for a 20-year-old, but he has become an important component for Liverpool in the Europa League and at times even in the Premier League. Now, I'm not suggesting he's the finished article yet. He has had his moments of weakness, giving away the odd silly foul and penalty at times, but there's no doubt that K Quanza has all the attributes to be a super defender, and physically he can become very imposing as well. A tall player, but not with the biggest jumping reach. His agility is definitely a little better than it shows in FM at the moment, but my biggest problem with him is that in no save does he regularly reach a top Premier League defender. And I would argue, given what we've seen already this season, there is every chance there's potential for that. Now, again, I'm not complaining too much about his current ability because last season he was good without being spectacular at Bristol Rovers. But this season at Liverpool, he's shown his potential. And really, even if his current ability doesn't get changed a huge amount, his potential ability needs a lift because at his best, K Quanza could become a top Premier League defender, and that should be reflected in FM24. Our penultimate player is someone who I feel is going to get a very big upgrade again in January, because Murillo, in a fairly poor season for Forest, has shown himself to be a very good central defender at Premier League level. Someone who is incredibly comfortable coming out with the ball from defence, which in fairness is already reflected in FM with good passing, dribbling and positional stats. However, defensively, he has shown himself to be pretty good as well. Maybe mentally deserves a slight upgrade, because he has been one of those players to show strength in character, which some at Forest have not done at times this season. And while otherwise physically and technically, I feel we might only see slight upgrades, if any at all. I feel mentally we're going to see a bit more from Murillo after the winter update. As it stands in FM24's original database, he's in the Forest 21s as a lone listed player. But given the fact that the likes of Worrell and McKenna have moved on, and he's overtaken several others at the club, it would seem silly for Murillo not to get an upgrade. And mentally is where I feel most of that's going to happen. And finally, I felt we had to finish with the champions, and the man that's probably replacing someone we saw earlier on in this episode. We've got Oscar Bobb at Manchester City, who's sort of becoming that breakthrough star as Cole Palmer perhaps was last year. At the moment got decent attributes, but again, not a huge amount of potential ability in FM24. So I've tried to mix this episode up with ones who have got current ability upgrades coming and ones that need big potential ability upgrades. And Oscar Bobb probably falls more into the latter, albeit we will see certain attributes improve. Composure he's shown several times, the winner at Newcastle United being a great example. Anticipation, concentration and off the ball movement. I feel we will see upgrades in all of those areas. Some of the technical attributes maybe a slight lift, but not a huge amount. And physically, I don't actually think a huge amount will change. But Oscar Bobb, the biggest thing needed, in addition to a few current ability changes and upgrades, is a big lift to that ceiling. Because again, sky's the limit potentially, and that needs to be reflected for Oscar Bobb in the FM24 Winter Update. So there's a fun little video for me predicting my top 10 Premier League players for a winter upgrade in FM24. Do you think those 10 will all get a lift in the winter update? If not, let me know who and why not in the comments below. Also, give me any more candidates you've got. There are plenty more that I had to chalk off to pick this top 10. If you did enjoy the video, something a little different, please do put a thumbs up on the video and subscribe for daily FM24 content from 2 long-term stories. We will hopefully be back to normal service tomorrow, providing my voice has recovered sufficiently. But thank you very much for watching as always. Your support is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to check out HelloFresh UK, the link in the description below. And I'll see you back here tomorrow as the head coach returns for another week.